Today, we will be beginning our Sustainable Leadership and Cultural Partnership session. The session looks to explore how different sectors, nonprofits, government, education, and business can work together to create sustainable paths for creative development. This conversation will examine how diverse approaches and cross-sector collaboration strengthen our creative ecosystem. I will now turn over the mic to Jesse Olson, Executive Director of the Fitchburg Cultural Alliance.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes. All right. Okay, so welcome everyone, welcome back. I hope you all got some coffee. So I think just quickly, if we can just go down the table and introduce ourselves, and then we'll dig into the questions. So I'm Jesse Olson, I'm the Executive Director of the Fitchburg Cultural Alliance.
I'm Natalie Rivera-Castro, I'm President at Centro Celeste.
And Mary Jo Bohart, Economic Development Director for the city.
Hi, I'm Sarah Hartman. I'm the Program Director for Creative Entrepreneurship at the Massachusetts College of Art and Design.
Hi, I'm Richleen Cadet. I'm the Director of Organizing at Mass Creative.
Hi, I'm Tamar Russell-Brown, and I'm a business owner, and I own Gallery Sitka and Sitka Creations.
So we have quite a collection of women all here. So our topic is sustainable leadership, and I think I got thrown onto this after a conversation with Derek about being leaders of creative organizations and how we navigate burnout and how we build successful partnerships so we can lift each other up. Because I think a few of us who are on this panel are also a team of one. So that's also having good partnerships and plans or how we can make the arts thrive and survive and keep going. So I'm just gonna dig right in, and I guess we're just kind of improvising, but I'm gonna ask some of the questions, and if somebody wants to raise their hand and jump in first, or we can go down the line, but if you each wanna explain how do your different sectors approach creative sustainability?
I can go first.
Okay.
Centro Celeste is a nonprofit. It's aimed at strengthening the Latino community here in North Central Mass, and that is through arts, culture, education, and inclusion. And pretty much it's to foster, collaboration and unity throughout our communities. So pretty much like creative sustainability is embedded into our mission in a multifaceted approach that integrates all of that, arts, culture, education, and inclusion. But each sector, it contributes uniquely to it. So with arts and culture, we contribute and support Latino artists, local Latino artists, by providing platforms to showcase their work, which fosters cultural preservation and promotes artistic exchange throughout. And it builds their network as well. With education, so the way that we do that is we develop professional development for different community leaders or even our own community members when they want to strengthen their skills. So we provide like real estate development workshops, or if they want to be a realtor or they want to be a notary public, justice of the peace, we provide workshops for that and even pay some of those fees or registrations. And with community engagement, it's the part of like inclusion and advocacy as well, working to create like equitable access for creative opportunities, ensuring that there is long-term engagement for the Latino representation in cultural and decision-making processes, and that's throughout different industries as well. So it doesn't just have to be government or municipal, like it could be all different kinds of other organizations and businesses throughout the region.
That's kind of great because that speaks a little to what we were talking about, how do artists identify themselves as entrepreneurs. So kind of continuing that conversation. Mary Jo.
So one thing, thinking from an economic development standpoint, it's been really encouraging to see the city at all levels, but particularly our elected leaders, start to deeply think of our creatives as micro enterprises, small businesses. That's exactly what you are. And so as we grow our ecosystem or the local economy, it comes in many forms. And we would be remiss if we had overlooked these creative micro enterprises that have always been present, but now more than ever, there's quite a cluster in our region, and most particularly here in Fitchburg. And so earlier in today's sessions, we were hearing about the Fitchburg arts community and when those residents take tenancy, which will be happening very soon. And I've been thinking about that facility as 68 households of these creative micro enterprises. So that's just yet another example of how that will ripple through our community. Many of them will be creating new businesses or even taking a brick and mortar type of a facility, possibly to exhibit their work or provide services in the community. So we wouldn't be who we are economically if it weren't for the creatives that have been in our midst, and it's very encouraging that the arts and culture is a huge part of our economic development strategy moving forward for the city of Fitchburg.
Thank you. Sarah.
All right. So first, I just have to say, because not everybody knows, that here in Massachusetts, we have the only publicly funded independent College of Art and Design, meaning anywhere else, if you want to go to art school, if you want to go to RISD, if you want to go to MICA, you're looking at about $250,000 for an arts degree. And that here in Massachusetts, we have a state school. Mass Art's actually part of the same group of state colleges that Fitchburg State belongs to. So how do we think about creative sustainability in higher education? So there are sort of two parts to what we do at Mass Art. A big part of my job is I run our creative business incubator, which helps students, alumni, and working artists based in the Boston area launch and grow creative ventures. We're currently also working on, finally, after nearly a decade, getting an official business minor off the ground, which is going to be a big step forward for the college, in part because the statistics show that art students who get meaningful access to business and entrepreneurship education as a part of their arts degree are twice as likely to express career satisfaction and financial satisfaction down the road. So a lot of the work that has historically has gone into training artists to be entrepreneurs comes too late. It comes when people are years into a career, sometimes with accumulated financial trauma from having a different trajectory right out of school. So bringing the business and entrepreneurship education into artist careers from the beginning rather than as a Band-Aid down the road, I think is going to make a big difference in the long run. However, most of us didn't have that. I went to Mass Art 25 years ago. I actually took my first art class here in Fitchburg 40 years ago. Oh, wow. There was no entrepreneurship education for artists, even though 70% of art school grads will be self-employed for a substantial portion of their career. So we have generations of artists who didn't get any meaningful support and training who make up a lot of our creative workforce now. So in addition to what we provide for our undergrads and what we're trying to create for our undergrads, we also, for the last 6 years, have been running a lot of free public programming in the form of both cohort-based programs and one-off workshops that teach things like business, financial, legal issues with a specific focus on the creative economy. In the 6 years since we've launched this, we've served more than 2,000 Massachusetts and New England-based artists with these programs.
So just a quick question. So within that business degree or study, are they learning things like accounting and marketing and just your basic small business infrastructure kind of skills?
Yeah, I don't want it to be limited to small business. I think the world would be a much better place if more creative people and artists got into big business and were in positions of leadership in all industries. That I think when people think about arts and entrepreneurship, we think small business right away, but it doesn't have to be that way. So we actually start our program with an emphasis on strategy, understanding how competitive forces are shaping the creative economy and teaching our students and creatives to think with a bigger vision about where opportunity exists for them and their talents and their skill set within a rapidly changing economy.
So it sounds like from the three we've heard so far, there's a big 360 of education and creating a home and then having the skills. So who's next? Richeline?
I'm just going to piggyback off what everybody else already said. I think in regards to how Mass Creative approaches our work, our main focus is about the education piece for sure, because we want to make sure that members of the sector continuously know what's going on in the State House in regards as it relates to policy and how they can be involved, and that doesn't happen without the proper education. So for us, when we think about sustainability, we see ourselves, a big role for us is being teachers, because we want to make sure that everyone understands the legislative process as much as possible, but are also empowered to go back into their communities and educate others. As Emily was saying, and whoever was next to her, shout out to them, because they really was putting everybody on to what we're doing. When we think about the Creative Institute that we do or the Advocacy Week that we do, our entire focus is about how are we teaching the sector to be empowered enough to take action, but also like what are the issues that are the most impactful to the sector right now that we need to hear directly from the members of this sector to take back and import into our work. So we do a lot of in-person event, and we do a lot of listening sessions that then turns into, you know, a year-long fellowship like the one that we currently have going on. We also think about ways that we can make what we do accessible to people, because we know that not everyone has access to go into the State House, and because everyone is from different part of the Commonwealth. So we find ways to create guide and create toolkits and have you all bring that work into your own individual community. So as the other panelists were sharing, like a big part of how we view ourselves is as teachers and as partners. We don't perceive ourselves as the leader of anything, and because we want to make sure that everybody feels as though like when they think of Mass Creative, they think of a partner to them and someone and people who can help guide them, but not people who are going to come into their communities and tell them how things are. So that's a big focus for us and something that we're proud to do and we want to continue to do. So as more things come up, I hope that like more people feel comfortable to say like, let me lean on Mass Creative to get more understanding of how I can create long-term impact in my individual community and for myself in the discipline that I practice.
Great, thank you. And Tamar, as someone who has a small business, you probably bring a unique perspective to this too.
It's very different, right?
Yeah.
But maybe not so much. I mean, so I'm a small business owner. I have a handful of employees here in North Central. And I was thinking about this topic of sustainability and partnerships. And the only way that a small business functions is through partnerships. Mm-hmm. And the only way that arts organizations or even artists can be supported is through partnerships, because money is on the table. That's the point, right? So as a small business owner with employees, my employees are very important. And that's always what I'm thinking about, is how to keep them employed. So that makes the art gallery side of our business function is through the for-profit business that we run. So some of the partnerships that I wanted to mention in this topic of sustainability are local to us, like very specific, right? Fitchburg State. And I wanted to talk about this. A lot of us do volunteer things, or we're part of arts organizations that are volunteer-based, that are nonprofits, and then we do that on the side of our day jobs. Like was mentioned this morning. And I'm really proud that here in our region we have Fitchburg State, which has a community, a comm media department. And we're in touch with that department, and that kind of has, since I've been here in this region, about 10, 12 years. the employees that I have. And so that relationship is really important. And I recently was in there talking to the internship department, and they were saying, and I want to put a plug in for them, they would like to see more creative businesses show up for their, what's the day? And I don't think we have anybody here from Fitchburg State. It's the day that they're going to have, do we? What's it called? There's a day when they're going to have all the employers come, and it's a job fair. I figured it out, job fair. They're having a job fair. They would like more businesses that are in the creative sector to show up to prove to their students that there's jobs here. Because at the end of the day, people need jobs, right? So even if you're an artist, you've got to think of your career as a job and then find ways to fund it, which is why we're all here today, right? So I'm really proud that our little small business can integrate with Fitchburg State and their internship program, which leads to people that we can employ. And one of my employees is also connected to Monty Tech, because a lot of the students coming out of that technical high school end up at places like Fitchburg State, or they go direct into jobs. So these partnerships is what creates sustainability for businesses. We also need partnerships, and being part of the creative economy, the only way is through partnerships. I think that's what I wanted to say about sustainability.
And actually, just a shout out to Fitchburg State that has launched a creative enterprise major. It's a new, or there's a new program in. Jonathan was here last night. I can't, what is it called? Well, thank you, Co, from Fitchburg State, who's part of the photography department. So we appreciate you being here and representing. So just quickly we want to move on to our next question, but from the Fitchburg Cultural Alliance point of view, we were formed as an organization of organizations with the idea of creating sustainability amongst our partners, and originally it was just the anchor institutions of the city, like the library and the Historical Society and the museum. But as we've entered our new era of being, we welcome individual artists so that we can be a sustaining support. We provide, we have a few spaces, but it's providing workspace for people to, if they are just starting, they can come use per diem or they can rent a studio. But it's also, I think something I'm finding a lot is letting artists know what is available, because I think toward the education piece, sometimes it seems daunting to want to be an artist, or to know that you have the freedom to spend your time being an artist. But even if you just are given a night where you can come and paint or write, and it's giving people, creating the sustainability is also giving the freedom to be an artist. But maybe then taking this whole idea of partnership that Tamar brought up, what are some, we can go back down the line, or if you want to jump out of order, but what are some meaningful partnerships that you have encountered in your roles or your organizations?
I have one that comes to mind, and I'm looking at Francisco Ramos is here, I know, from New View. There he is. When New View stepped up, and Francisco, you'll have to check me on how far back this occurred, but the emergence of art stewards as a program, and New View as our local community development corporation really led that charge. And that, I think, was extremely impactful. And it began at a time when the creative economy was recognizable in Fitchburg, but this kind of took it to another level, because all of a sudden people were going through this training, and then they were doing different types of projects and initiatives in the community. But New View as a nonprofit organization became quite a partner in the growth of our creative ecosystem. So that struck in my head when that first happened, that it was a game changer for Fitchburg.
Any other meaningful partnership? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I can say at Mass Art, we've been working with the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture of the City of Boston for about 6 years now, sort of partnering on our free program and professional development for artists. We've also done some work with property developers, trying to find opportunities for our students and alumni to share, in our case, because I'm with the business incubator, finding opportunities for our sort of newly formed student-run businesses or alumni who are a few years out to have opportunity to temporarily pop up or showcase their businesses in parts of Boston that would be cost prohibitive as a small business who was going on their own. We're also just now, we're in the same environment that I think everyone is in, where there's a lot of fear. I can say I'm definitely working with a smaller budget at a time when demand is up right now. So we've sort of actively been looking at what new private partners could we work with if public dollars are down. So like one thing I'm really excited about is we've been working with a Harvard Ed Portal to create a personal finance support group style cohort for artists that's leaving marketing aside, leaving entrepreneurship aside, and just saying, all right, the very questions of personal finance and building a secure financial life looks really different if you're a self-employed creative, and all the advice out there assumes that you've got a W-2, you've got a 401k match, and most of us do not have that or go through decades of a career without that. So most artists are not going to have 40 years of 401k matching. What does that mean for home ownership? What does that mean for student loan repayment? So we're really excited about this partnership focusing just on the personal finance question. Yes.
That's really great.
Yes. More announcements on that to come soon.
Excellent. Tamar.
So I wanted to say a couple things on this topic. Like, it's very interesting. Partnerships in the for-profit area are a little different maybe than nonprofit. But I've been really happy to be involved at some points in my years here with the Alliance in the volunteer space and I wish more of my employees would get this, and I think that's the next generation is an interesting, like I've seen one of them in particular who was like, yep, after hours, Tamar, I go home. Like, I don't want to go to a meeting. And I'm like, that's actually, from my perspective, not the best way to look at things, because I love our cultural council here. If Joe Bowen had never walked into my gallery years ago and said, hey, you need to get involved, and some other artists who aren't here today walked in and said, hey, you need to get involved, and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And then ultimately you learn skills, right? So everybody who helped get the Alliance with the spaces that were to open, you learn skills that you wouldn't have learned otherwise. So like open meeting law, I didn't know what open meeting law was until I got involved with the Cultural Council. But then what you learn by volunteering and being involved in different arts organizations, because I've been involved in 2 others in different areas, one in the state, one in New Hampshire, you learn how to run a meeting, which you can use in your business life. Even if you're an artist and you need to go into a meeting that's with something corporate, you then know the structure. Okay, this is how the meeting should run. This is what I need to come prepared to do. This is what an agenda looks like. These are things you might not learn as an artist or even a designer or a web designer, but then you volunteer a little bit and suddenly you learn things. So I would advocate, and I do with my team, is that like they should volunteer somewhere, somehow, make room for it, and then you learn things. And so from my perspective as just an entrepreneur, a little business owner in the region, I've learned so much from the moments when I've been involved with these nonprofits. So I would encourage artists, just, you're struggling, you're working, doing your art, you've got to pay the bills, you're doing all these things. If you can get yourself in one small organization, volunteer at the Cultural Council, get involved in the Alliance, suddenly you're like educating yourself, but you're also helping. So it's a nice, I guess you can call that a partnership.
Hey, Jesse,
yeah.
Moderator Derek here. I wanted to ask a follow-up to this question, and maybe somebody can answer. Are there challenges like with setting boundaries where you have artists and creatives who do a lot of the volunteering and to the other side, with either municipalities, the government, other nonprofits, and the for-profit sector? What boundaries? Are there any challenges that you all, is really for the full table, face, and how do we get through those? How do we push through those?
Do you mean I was thinking as a follow-up question, so maybe this is kind of similar to what you were saying. Like, I'm thinking partnerships are kind of like group projects in school, right? Where you might have like 2 or 3 people who show up and do all the work, and then you have the one person who shows up at the end and says, hey, look at what I did. So, and maybe that even speaks a little to what you were saying, Tamar, about volunteer and service. So maybe the boundaries are how do you set your own personal limit to keep your mental health okay, but also how do we encourage more people to get involved so the workload isn't all on the shoulders of one or two people? Does that sound right, Derek?
Yes. Yeah. I didn't know Richie wanted to answer that. That's what I was.
Oh,
Richleen. I was like, that's a great question. I think coming from a community organizer and political organizer background, I think that like the feeling of burnout is inevitable, like especially because like we're in a political climate where I feel like everyone is operating in response and oftentimes out of fear. And sometimes when, like for example, for our team, there are certain seasons where it's like really stressful and we're like, how do we structure things better and how do we ask for help from the right folks to make sure that it's not just on the three of us? Because somebody mentioned that there's someone who's on a team of one. We run a statewide organization with 3 badass women. That's it, just the 3 of us. So oftentimes it can feel like it's an overload, but I think the way we are intentional about the partnerships and coalitions that we build with others is extremely crucial to our work. For us, we don't consider success to be we did something by ourselves and it was executed well by the grace of God. It's all about who did we bring to the table into our work, who now understand what we do and can support our work moving forward. There's people in this room that I've seen that we've had the opportunity to collaborate with on many different projects. When we do our listening sessions, like before we establish what policy we're going to be pursuing during the legislative season, we go around the state and we try to do legislative briefing in as many communities as possible. Now, some of these communities, we have to start from scratch. Others, we have really well relationships that we can depend on that allow us to say, hey, we need your help. And the organizers in the community is able to come together and say, like, how can we help? And then we give them those toolkits and we give them the resources that they need to help us out. I definitely think that the majority of our work has literally been a huge success because of the cross-sector collaborations we've been able to build and the relationship we've had with other nonprofits and other individual artists, small business owners, and our administrators who understand how crucial it is to not do this work alone, especially because when you're in the business of policy, and it is an exhausting work, because it's not something that's fast-paced. It is years of patiently working through it and hoping and praying and working. And sometimes like people lose hope along the way because they are hoping for fast result and they get frustrated by how little they get, right? So like I was saying earlier, like the education piece and making sure people understand, like, it is not gonna happen fast. We are meeting you where you are at, because if you feel like you need to jump off the train for this season, but you wanna hop on the next, or you have a different way of supporting, we'll take that. Something that I focused on when I joined the team was, how can I meet everyone where they're at so that way they feel like they're contributing in a way that makes sense for them and that they don't feel like we're overwhelming them with our acts, because we do have a lot of things you can support with, but that doesn't mean that you have to jump on everything. We have people who are always ready to go, and we're happy to have them. So if you're one of those people, we're happy to have you. And then we have people who's like, well, I can send a letter, I can donate, I can tell people about an upcoming event you have. Those are all very impactful to us in one way or another. So it's all about, and I also think like during the slow season, there is intention behind how our team recover. There's a lot of grace that's extended to each other. I personally can say like we work in a team that really genuinely care about making sure each other is good, and that we are investing in how we show up every day, before everything else. Because if we're not good, then our work won't be good. So the intention behind making sure that our team is functioning well and that we have support in-house is super, super crucial to the work that we do. So we're lucky to have a boss and that cares about that and invest in that. So I hope that answers the question because I ramble on a little bit.
But that's great. Wow. Yeah, please.
All right, okay. So just to add to that, from the nonprofit perspective, setting boundaries with, restrictions with your staff and capacity, honestly, you're not a superhero. You can't tackle every single issue that's in the community. With my organization specifically, like we're all volunteers, so none of us get paid, but we still have our official titles and try to help the community as we can. The biggest, honestly, I would say the partnerships that you create with other nonprofits or other organizations is your biggest asset. Because you would want to help every single person in your community, but you don't have a person to help with that specifically, and you're going to drive yourself crazy if you try to fulfill every single need in the community. So having those partnerships with other organizations that specialize in different industries or different issues, like immigration or health, mental health, things like that, you can outsource those items to them. And that's not to say like, oh, I can't, we weren't good enough because we don't have that service. No, your biggest asset is being able to outsource those items so that the people are not waiting or your community is not waiting on you to kind of get answers because you don't know everything. But you contact and make relationships with the specialists that do. So creating those partnerships are very important because you're able to create that resource for others in the community. I think that's the most important thing in the nonprofit world is creating that network of individuals or organizations that you're able to connect others with so that they are informed and have the correct resource to move forward.
Thank you. Yeah, Mary Jo?
I had a slightly, maybe a different twist on the notion of boundaries. And I think a lot of the comments that we've heard up till now have been excellent. But kind of setting boundaries so you can balance, what you want to achieve and so on. One thing that has occurred to me maybe recently is that as the climate of what's unfolding at the national level is very fluid, artists typically want to be able to have free expression without boundaries. And so maybe that's another notion of boundaries that we want to be hyper-focused on kind of in this moment that we're at right now and moving forward, which is so often, depending on how a project is funded, you wouldn't want to feel as a creative that you're limited in what your content is going to be based on maybe what the funding source wants or something like that. So to whatever degree we're able to not tether in our creatives and so that their content can be truly a free expression. I think that's just something we have to be really mindful of kind of now more than ever. So if there are any boundaries, creatives are famous for kind of pushing through that in whatever it is that they're creating. And I just wanted to throw that out there for everyone to keep in mind now more than ever.
Tamar?
Do we have time for one more comment? I was going to talk about
7 minutes.
7,
Yeah.
okay, sorry. About boundaries and burnout. I think I've seen like a large businesses who make a certain dedicated amount that they either will give or volunteer. And as a small business with people, this is the first time this year we kind of thought maybe there's a way we should do the same thing because everybody only has so many hours in the day. Everybody only has so much time on the weekend, and where are you going to spend that time and where are you going to spend your money? So I think it's kind of interesting for anybody who in this room who's volunteering and has free time, off time, that they dedicate to the arts, to the cultural sector of our local community here. Sometimes putting it on paper is helpful, And, it's really hard to do, but this was the first year where I kind of thought for our team, who can we help? Where can we volunteer? What pro bono work can we do? And actually, what can we handle? And then supporting online by even maybe saying, if someone asks, because this is interesting, this is hard. Every organization needs help. Every organization needs people, resources, and then there's the sharing, which I saw in the questions, which I thought was interesting. How do we share resources? Because all of us kind of need the same. We all need people. We all need money. So how do we share? And we all need the same things at the end of the day, too. Every arts organization needs the same things. Needs marketing, needs people, needs boots on the ground for certain things. And sometimes there's a duplication of efforts, as we all know. But so this was the first year where we kind of thought, how can we put this on paper? Well, where can we help? Who on the team can help? What are we doing? And how much pro bono work can we actually handle? And I think that's good for everybody in the room to think about. Starting, we're in the middle of Q2, so thinking ahead the rest of the year, how much time am I willing to commit for the year, and how much money and how much free work or whatever it is this is from a business perspective, right? How much pro bono work can we do, and without taxing everybody and without burning anyone out? So I think it's a really good thing to put it on paper. And then from arts organizations who use volunteer support, I just, again, wanted to say it's really helpful when the arts organization can say to the person on the board, or here's what we need of you, and here's the hour requirement we're estimating, so that there's a upfront, there's an arts organization who asked us for help, and we were at our limit, and I literally said, if you can give me 3 months, we're going to time out on such and such, and we'd have room. So I think from many arts organizations in the room, when you're asking for support, it's helpful to give the expectation at the front.
So I have one kind of close-up question, but just to kind of take off of some of these comments. So I'm a big fan of our former U.S. Surgeon General, Dr. Vivek Murthy, and one of his outgoing messages, he called to action about the loneliness epidemic, and he made a podcast tour right before January 20th, and he was advocating for more service, and that service was a way to help not only heal ourselves, but also to heal our social fabric. And I think with the arts, that's a way to build our community. So it's not just the economy of commerce, but it's the economy of relationships. And I think a lot of what we're saying here too, is a lot of what all these panels are going to be about. Is part of economy is knowing your customers and knowing your vendors. And I think whether you're paying with time or you're paying with dollars, I think that, yes, I agree with you, Tamar, about service, and it's building that value of time. But maybe within that, and a little bit to what Mary Jo was saying about our, we draw our boundaries. But we are also in this new challenging reality where things are not the shape that they were just a couple weeks ago. What are some, as we're talking about partnerships and sustainability, maybe just to kind of close out, are you thinking outside of your box, or what are some partnerships you can think of that can help grow, whether it's your organization or our community? Are there partnerships that you see that are working that you can build on, or are there partnerships that you would like to see happen? Jump in.
I have a thought, and I'll just sort of throw it out for the audience to ponder as well. I heard a quote just this past week, and it was talking about how opinions or people's mindset can change. And so often we would expect that if you see data will change people's minds. And I can't remember who the quote was attributed to, but they said, data doesn't change people's minds, emotions do. And the arts are rooted in emotion. And I thought, wow. So maybe you were talking about partnerships yet to be forged. How about just the general public, as a partner? And we were speaking about volunteerism. Sometimes it's creatives that are volunteering, but sometimes it's the general public. And so if emotions can change people's minds, and the arts, evoke emotion, there's something there. And I'm not quite sure precisely what it is, but that just really resonated with me.
Maya Angelou said, "It's not what you say, it's not what you do, it's how you make people feel." Not exact quote, but pretty much what she said, right? Any other thoughts about building or new partnerships?
I mean, I think the thing I'd really like to see, and this is building off of what you just said, is that there's a degree of precarity that we've been conditioned to accept as creative workers that to some degree, when our financial lives are more difficult, we're told, well, what did you expect? That's what you get. That's the price that you pay for doing emotionally fulfilling work. And I think one of the shifts that we're just at the beginning of, being driven by AI, being driven by growing inequality, is that a lot of the safe jobs, or what we were conditioned to see as responsible jobs, are going away or are tipping into the kind of precarity that we have more experience with. And I think that looking across sectors, that programmers, that lawyers, all sorts of professions that we were told were responsible and good jobs, are going to face the same challenges that we've gotten used to. And if we can get past this, what's a good job, what's a responsible job, what's an irresponsible job, everybody who works deserves a degree of economic security. And I think that if we as artists can team up with all of these newly precarious responsible workers, we can maybe start to change some things.
If I can add to that, I think my last thought I would like to share is regarding the community aspect that you was asking. Right now, I feel there's this feeling that everyone is operating alone and that we need to be moving in silo, but there is nothing more important to the movement into creating actual sustainable change than creating sustainable communities. It is super important for you to be buying from your small business owner, your local businesses, to be going to events that are funded through public funding, to be buying from your local artists. Right now, everyone thinks that this issue may not affect me because that's not the sector that I'm a part of, but the way I view my work is what is the intersection of all of the issues that are impacting the sector. When you think of healthcare, artists need healthcare. When you think of housing, artists need housing. When you think of education, artists need education. There is not an issue that is singular to just a specific sector. So if there is a desire to move in silo, fight against that, because the only way we're going to see the real change is to build sustainable communities and to be proactive about saying, I'm showing up to this, I'm supporting this, I want my legislators to know about this, but I also want this organization to know that the work that they're doing is not falling on deaf ear because I'm someone who's being positively impacted by that. So if I can share any last thought, it would be for people to be more proactive about creating communities, because the only way we can actually fight against anything that's going on is to do it together, and not by saying I'm gonna stay in my corner because that's the place where I've been put. So that's the last thing that was really burning at me as everybody was sharing out loud.
Thank you.
Jesse, I have a comment, but what was the question again?
What are partnerships that you want to build on, or you think are opportunities for the future to grow? But you can make your comment. Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say, I love the comment this morning about the park and the pathway into the park with the art. And I think my initial foray into the whole creative economy / political in Massachusetts was at an event at the Mass Cultural Council did in Worcester, where a woman spoke about a similar project in Boston where they were rethinking the Rotary in a certain neighborhood based on the art that they put. And that kind of blew my mind, because that's what arts and culture does. it blows your mind because people are thinking outside the box and they're thinking differently. So I would say in terms of partnerships in the future, I've noticed a number of people in my business life say this is the year of yes, and they're making decisions based on yes versus no. And I think what we're seeing in the media, what we're seeing from high-level government is some negativity and change. But I think if all of us in the creative economy and bringing that down very local, if we think yes, how, or we think growth mindset in everything we're doing, I think it's easier for us to look at an organization and instead of going no, go yes, and here's how, when. And I think that's what I want to see in my growth this year with organizations. That was my comment. Growth mindset, yes.
Thank you. All right. Any last comments? We are at 11:54. Derek, is that kind of where? Out here? Okay. Any questions from the audience?
Oh,
Everybody wants lunch, right?
everyone wants. No questions? Cards. Oh.
Oh, sorry. I'm thinking that we just have too many ideas in our heads right now that we don't know where to start to ask questions because we have way too many notes and questions for you that will extend way beyond here. Thank you very much.
All right, this is for the, how you doing? This is for the for-profit world. When you put your volunteer support on paper, the hours needed and skills needed, what does that look like to you? Like a spreadsheet, or how would you want something like that formulated? So if somebody that was a nonprofit came to you and said X, Y, and Z, how would you want that to look?
So I can quote Nick Capasso on this one from the Art Museum. So I was at a meeting with Nick and I think Liz, and Nick says in the conversation, like he was happy to sit with us, have a conversation, spend an hour, and then he goes, this isn't in the museum's mission, so I'm happy to have the conversation. The museum cannot commit X or whatever. They couldn't participate, but he was happy to listen to the conversation. So I took away from that, when an organization or even a business has a mission, what's the mission should drive everything, right? So I took that as, okay, we have a mission as a small business, so who do we support that is part of our mission, which we're a design company, basically, marketing design, and we're focused on that we like the arts. So then I said, okay, where are we based? We're based in Massachusetts. We have an employee in Connecticut, one in Rhode Island. Where within those 3 states can we support one organization, and then what does that look like in terms of people, manpower? And yes, I put it on paper, and then we decided, like with each organization, what we could do. And so yeah, it's on paper, and then as we were sitting here talking, I had an idea too, which is like there's a couple of the organizations that we support that we don't say we support, and it's really, I think, important to then help the organization by saying, hey, we support this organization, which gives that organization some visibility too. So yeah, we put it on paper, and it was mission-driven.
Thank you. We have another question right here.
I don't have a question, but I have a comment that the change in Fitchburg in arts has been back in the industrial age. We had a lot of powerful benefactors that we no longer have. We rely more on public than private on the big expense. Stratton Players, or Amateur Workshop, Inc. was started by Faye Crocker and her hand in the back pocket of her husband to get the money. But it's important to realize that all art, whether it's performing arts, visual arts, music arts, not every form is acceptable to everyone, but it all needs to be supported so that this can go forward and help out because there are people who are involved with that. And so we just need to broaden everybody's vision to encompass all and accept all.
Thank you, Hal. Does anyone on the panel have any thoughts to Hal's comment?
I just want to say, even when you have somebody like the Crockers funding the arts, people still do too much and burn out.
Hi. So I was a creative for many years, still am, the creative never dies. But in the world of being a creative, I think one of the biggest challenges that I found was being able to make a thriving living for myself by being able to monetize doing what I love. So I would just encourage, as a fellow creative, to have an open mind to your philanthropic activities, your volunteer activities, the things that you do and the places that you go, because the things I'm able to do today were because of doors that were unlocked for me inside of events that I thought were not going to be valuable for me 5 years ago. And those things open up doors that open up doors that open up doors. So I would just encourage any creative, I am and still am a creative, to allow yourself to get out there, meet people, engage your community, if also for the secondary benefit of opening the potential for you to not just survive doing what you love, but to thrive doing what you love. So I would just encourage creatives to engage in those activities.
Thank you. All right.
It's never working. Just to emphasize on the point that you said, I appreciate that because in our nonprofit, since we deal with so many creatives, so many local artists, the theme that we give back to them is, you know, you do this talent, but you also have to invest in yourself and invest in the business that you create. So providing those resources, even if it's not through us, but providing them the resources to an organization that can help them with the business plan, help them get funding, things like that, it's important for us to kind of advance and move forward. So that's a big theme that I think that needs to be pushed out there and people need to be informed of.
Can everybody hear me? All right, great. I just want to say that in the current time, in the current climate, with all of the uncertainties that we have, everyone, I want to echo everything that everybody has said, to lean into our communities, to lean into learning who our neighbors are, to get to know the people that are important near you, but also to remember that art intrinsically is resistance. And that as we create more art, as we connect to each other, our voices rise, our voices solidify, and we become more aligned with the truth of what art is, which is expression, community, love, healing, joy, right? And so I want all of us to take from this really exceptional day of information how important it is for us to keep loving each other as a community and to get out there and find tiny ways to combat the fear that is coming out of there, because if we put our minds together, there's more of us than there are any of those broligarchs, okay?
Thank you. Thank you. So can each of my panelists give us like a, just to wrap us up, like a 30-second elevator pitch, why you're here, what really matters to you, and something that the audience can take away from today's panel.
We might start. Maybe we'll start this way and come back, seeing as we've reversed order.
You want to start here?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm a creative person who likes creative communities, and I like living in them. And so that's why I got involved when I moved here. So I would say to everybody, if you want to be the community that you want to live in, right? That's my pitch.
I would say my life work is to help people understand the need to change from a me to we perspective, because again, nothing happened in silo, and the only way to see real change is in community and through community. So everything that I do and this organization does is to ensure that everyone understands that, like, when there is more of us doing it together, that's when real impact happens. So I hope everyone feels a sense of the need to be in community, especially during these times, and to just continue to pour in and support one another's work, because, again, nothing real will change unless that happens. Oh, and don't forget to stop by our table. We're tabling right there. We're going to be there for another couple of minutes, so please stop by to learn a little bit more about some initiatives that we got going on. And put on your calendar for April 28th through May 2nd that we are doing Advocacy Week, and we'd love to partner with you all. Thank you.
I would just say that artists belong everywhere, and I think the fact that we don't have enough artists in position of leadership and power is part of what's wrong with the world today. And while trying to be everywhere, make sure that you don't let your work be undervalued, and start to look at all of the subtle ways that we're fed narratives that do undervalue and belittle the value that we bring to the table.
I just want to emphasize, and I'll use the city of Fitchburg as sort of my lens since I work for the city. Our uniqueness is our brand, and the diversity that is present, it was present in the founding of this city, and it's even more vibrant at the moment. We don't want to overlook that. We want to lean into it. And so that will come out in the types of art and creativity that occur here, but it's what makes Fitchburg a place. And so I just want to emphasize that we need to lean into that.
Yeah, pretty much what all the other ladies here have said. Community is a big part of everything that we do, especially as a nonprofit. You have to serve your community. So leaning into each other, not creating silos, making sure that you're collaborating on projects, different resources, and not holding that information and distributing it where it needs to go. I think it's just very important to keep those partnerships, keep those collaborations, because they're going to be very important. So I just lean on that.
If you've ever gotten an email from me, my signature is be well, be creative. And I really echo the me versus we mindsets. And I think one of the best ways we can be well is to think what's in it for we, not what's in it for me. But I think part of that is also being creative and not letting the bad stuff get us down, but realize that together we can overcome all that's being thrown at us now. But the fact that we are all here today, I think that shows that there's a will and a desire to be well and be creative.